Lately, people have been telling me that I look Mexican, like a Nick Fuentes style Mexican, and frankly, I don't think they're correct. They're probably just trying to flatter me. But that's not what today's video is about. Today's video is about being sleepy, tired, and antisocial, because those are all things that describe me in my current state. Today's been kind of strange because I managed to get the bare minimum of assignments done, that being all of my Anki and the other apps that I use to learn things. I did, you know, at least like the limit for myself on those things. Most of what I did was just listen to stuff in Spanish because for whatever reason, can't seem to find the energy within myself to go above and beyond, which normally wouldn't be a problem because when I don't have any energy, I tend to just study a lot anyway. And what I'll instead do is study very slowly and kind of very actively place myself into whatever I'm doing. But what seems to be happening today is this interesting phenomenon where the problem isn't so much that I'm tired as much as it is the fact that my, brain is kind of drifting off into nothing, and I find myself making mistakes that I wouldn't normally make that end up seeming rather obvious. And of course, rather than becoming frustrated with myself, I've just, trekked along and then found other things that I could do that might be more motivating or stimulating or something. But the problem seems to be that I'm on this bizarre, like, brain fog. I'm in the midst of some bizarre brain fog. And the only identifiable reason I can see, as of now, is the fact that, well, number one, I haven't been getting the best sleep. So I've been sleeping for less than 7 hours, each night. And last night in particular, it was less than that. And so that's going to have a negative impact. But the other, component to this is immediately following waking up, I'll consume like 200 milligrams of caffeine, which for me is a lot. But I've been doing that for weeks at this point, which means that I should probably lay off a little bit and just have, the equivalent of what's in like some black tea or something, and then do that for at least a couple days just to let my brain kind of readjust. And then I might not see the fogginess so much because I'll have like a really good couple hours at the start of the day where I'm firing all cylinders. It seems like it's game, set, match. I'm going to win this thing. And what I do in those first couple hours is really crucial. That's why I always study immediately after waking up. So I'll wake up and I'll do my Anki first thing. Like, usually it's water, caffeine, Anki. And I'm, sometimes I'm still laying in my bed as I'm doing it, but I do all that, and then I move on to another app called Master, which is not a very good app, admittedly, but it does provide you some exposure to your target language and multiple choice questions where you have to like fill in the correct word in the sentence, and you're listening to sentences, you're reading them. It wouldn't be a good learning device on its own, but as supplemental material to do for just a little bit every day, it helps, I would say. It's taught me some new words. And then after that, I'll listen to a song, or I'll read a story in Spanish as I did today, or I'll start doing Duolingo and then do the story afterwards. But usually, it's like there's a story that I'll read, and then I'll do, however much Duolingo. I try to complete 1 unit per day. because I think that's a pretty good amount for an app that honestly doesn't do all that much besides just provide some exposure to the person. And then I go back to doing more Anki, and then I start getting, some comprehensible input, listening, more reading, and these are, all things that I'm stacking onto each other. And then, after a little bit of that, I'll go on to take a break and I'll watch a video in English with just Spanish subtitles. I'll read the subtitles along as I'm watching the video, and then I'll do a lesson out of one of the grammar books or grammar exercise lessons that I can find on YouTube. And this is especially useful to put into context some of the things that I'm reading and some of the things I might encounter that, maybe I comprehend it, but I don't really understand why it functions that way. It gives me a deeper understanding to do the grammar work and to really, actively work on it. And that's all within the first couple hours of each day. That's how my days begin and progress. But what seems to happen after the first couple hours pass is I become very tired, and my brain just fizzles out. It's like I start to get this brain fog, and I'm not thinking as clearly. And this is something that occurs regardless of how much or how hard I work in a day. And so because of that, I believe it's a product of me coming down from the caffeine, because it stands to reason that when you consume caffeine after a number of hours, your body starts to get rid of it, and then your brain is responding to the fact that your body is getting rid of it. And obviously you're going to feel tired. But I found myself sort of wondering if I should break one of my sacred rules that I vow to never break, which is consume caffeine in the middle of the day, albeit in a very small amount. I considered, why don't I just have a Coca-Cola, It's like the middle of the day, the caffeine in my brain has been depleted. I could have a Coca-Cola, and sure, I might have some anxiety from consuming caffeine that late in the day, but I would also have the advantage of kind of revving my system, so to say, revving that motor in order to make me work a little bit more effectively. But it's always, something that you're giving away something in order to take that benefit in the short term. Your sleep could be taking a hit as a result of that. And who knows, maybe my sleep is taking a hit already because of how much I consume right as the day begins. So I was like, that's not a great strategy. What I should do instead is just, not have the most productive day today, but then tomorrow, consume significantly less caffeine. And then, probably work a little bit slower, not be able to get as many questions right as quickly, just be willing, to make more mistakes and the like. And that's what I've done when I've lessened my caffeine intake just in general. The annoying thing with that happening with Duolingo is because I have this specific intention to complete 1 unit a day on that app, the free version of the app ends up getting on my nerves because if you make even one mistake, that's one heart that goes away, and after that it's only a couple more mistakes before you have to do these practice levels in order to get more hearts, which wouldn't be terrible in concept if it weren't for the fact that the practice levels always have the most redundant, basic stuff ever that you've already reviewed so many times, so you're not even really getting anything out of the repetition. Um, and so it just becomes a chore to actually use the app. I have a pretty long streak on there though, so like I don't want to, stop using it, um, and let go of my streak. I have such a long streak. Um, so I think what I might do is actually just start paying for it, so that I don't have to deal with having to do the practice levels over and over and over just to, get my hearts back. Because if you have the premium version, you can make as many mistakes as you want, and you can still play. Um, it's kind of crazy that I've developed as long of a streak as I have, while also, having to do practice levels the whole time. But that's just because I'm really cheap, and usually when I play that game, what I'll do is focus really intently on it so I don't make any mistakes whatsoever. But sometimes your brain just slips up, and it just happens. Especially when you're doing those legendary stages. I mean, you can't look at clues or anything. Not to say that I do look at clues, because that you know, kind of defeats the point of what you're trying to do. You're trying to actively recall and work within the system. Um, but if you have an Anki deck that specifically focuses on, you know, whatever course you're doing on Duolingo, you can combine SRS, spaced repetition, with, the gamified kind of exposure you're getting there, and really retain the stuff. It's why I'm not like totally against the app. I think people are kind of they unnecessarily hate on it. Um, it's not perfect, but it'll definitely help you learn, if you're using it in conjunction with other stuff, particularly comprehensible input. I mean, Anki and comprehensible input, that's like the gold standard for learning a language. Um, but, you need a lot of it, um, and it certainly favors, more intensive study. Um, but, that's going to be the case with anything on some level, right? Any resource that you use, you're going to get more out of it the more intensive you are. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the strange predicament I've been having today, because I've been playing that game, because like, I'm willing to let myself play like a regular video game for a really short period of time, but I generally don't like, making that kind of sacrifice. I'm sure you'll see a video of me playing one on this channel pretty soon. But, it's like, if I want to give myself the pleasure of playing a video game, it's like Duolingo is a video game, It's not as valuable of a resource as all the other things you could be using to learn. But it's a leisure activity. It's fun, Um, and so, I end up finding myself on there, and there's some great incentives on there too to keep you playing. So it's one of those things, like, it's a tool in your toolbox, but for me in particular, um, is going to get a lot of usage, uh, and it's annoying to have to do the practice levels just to like continue playing if you happen to be tired, or not the most observant in that moment, and you just make a mistake, right? um, so that's something that I need to address. um, Man, I'm so tired. It's like, yeah, I really need to be getting better sleep. I'm hoping to switch to a nighttime schedule, which is actually like what this video is supposed to be about. Is I've been nocturnal again. I might end up just making a different video about that phenomenon, because this video ended up being kind of a review of Duolingo. It's fun, just don't exclusively use it. Okay guys, I'll see you tomorrow.